You wake in the darkness, heart hammering against your ribs, and your mouth feels wrong. Your tongue searches frantically, finding gaps where teeth should be, tasting blood that isn't there. You reach up with trembling hands and feel them crumbling, disintegrating like ancient stone, falling into your palms one by one. The terror is absolute, primal. It reaches into something far deeper than rational fear. And then you wake again, truly this time, gasping in your bed, running your tongue over intact teeth, trying to convince yourself it was only a dream. But the dread doesn't leave. It follows you into the bathroom mirror, into your morning coffee, into the forced smile you give your colleagues. Something about this particular nightmare feels different. It feels like a message you cannot ignore, written in a language you've forgotten how to read. This is not random neural noise. This is not your brain sorting through meaningless data while you sleep. Carl Jung discovered something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Your unconscious mind is far more intelligent than your waking consciousness. And when it speaks through dreams, it speaks in symbols that carry the weight of your entire psychological structure. Teeth falling out, crumbling, rotting in your mouth. This is one of the most common nightmares reported across every culture, every time period, every demographic. The universality alone should tell you something profound is happening. Your psyche is screaming that something essential inside you is collapsing, and you've been too distracted, too defended, too busy performing your life to notice the decay spreading beneath the surface. Sigmund Freud laid the foundation for understanding this terror. He recognized that teeth in dreams represent loss, but not just any loss, the loss of what makes you feel powerful, vital, alive. Teeth are instruments of aggression. They bite, they tear, they defend. They are how you assert yourself in a world that constantly demands you shrink, comply, be smaller than you are. When they fall out in your dreams, Freud would say you're confronting castration anxiety, not in the literal sense, but in the symbolic recognition that you've lost your power, your ability to fight back, your capacity to sink your teeth into life and claim what's yours. You've become toothless, defenseless, unable to bite down on reality with any real force. Think about what teeth actually do. They break down food, making the external world digestible, transformable into energy you can use. They are the first point of contact between you and everything you consume. When they crumble in your dreams, you're losing your ability to process reality, to break down experience into something you can actually integrate. You're being shown, in the most visceral way possible, that you can no longer consume life properly. Something has gone wrong with how you're taking in the world, and the dream is forcing you to feel the consequence of that failure. But Freud's interpretation, while profound, only scratches the surface. Jung took this foundation and expanded it into something that reaches far deeper into the architecture of the human psyche. For Jung, teeth aren't merely about sexual anxiety or fear of powerlessness. They represent the entire structure of your identity beginning to collapse. Every time you dream of losing teeth, your unconscious is asking you a question you've been avoiding. What part of yourself are you refusing to acknowledge? What aspect of your authentic being have you denied, repressed, hidden away because it doesn't fit the acceptable image you've constructed? This is the shadow speaking. The shadow in Jungian psychology is not evil, it's not bad. It's simply everything about yourself that you've decided is unacceptable. Your rage, your ambition, your sexuality, your aggression, your power, all the parts of yourself that don't fit the nice, polite, civilized persona you present to the world. And when you repress these aspects long enough, when you smile when you want to scream, when you swallow your truth because speaking it might make someone uncomfortable, when you betray your own needs to maintain false peace, the shadow begins to speak through symptoms, through anxiety, through depression, through dreams of your teeth crumbling into dust. Jung would ask you directly, where have you surrendered your bite? Where have you stopped defending your boundaries? Where have you allowed yourself to be consumed instead of consuming? The dream isn't warning you about what might happen. It's showing you what's already happening beneath your conscious awareness. The decay has already begun, Every time you silence yourself, every time you perform instead of being authentic, every time you choose comfort over truth, you lose another tooth. The foundation is crumbling, and your unconscious mind is giving you one final warning before complete psychological disintegration. But here's what changes everything. Jung saw something in these dreams that Freud missed. Loss can be transformation. Children lose their baby teeth to make way for permanent ones. The old must die so the new can emerge. Your terror might not be about decay at all. It might be about the transformation you're resisting with every fiber of your being. You're clinging to an outdated version of yourself, old beliefs, old ways of being that no longer serve you, and your psyche is trying to destroy them by force. The dream is showing you that something stronger is trying to emerge, but you won't let go of what's already dead. You're holding rotting teeth in your mouth, refusing to spit them out, terrified of the gap they'll leave behind. But that gap is exactly where your authentic power is waiting to break through. Jung's solution isn't to suppress the dream or distract yourself from its message. It's to turn directly toward what terrifies you and demand an answer from your own depths. What is my unconscious trying to integrate? This is where most people fail. They want the dream to stop, but they don't want to change. They want relief without transformation. But Jung discovered something that changes everything about how we approach these nightmares. The teeth falling out represent shadow material. Those parts of yourself you've rejected, denied, or hidden because someone once told you they were unacceptable. Perhaps it's your aggression, your sexuality, your ambition, your rage, your refusal to be controlled. Whatever you've deemed too dangerous to own is now demanding to be seen, and it will destroy your psychological foundation until you acknowledge it. The shadow isn't evil. This is what people misunderstand. The shadow is simply everything you've been taught to exile from your conscious identity. If you were raised to be nice, your shadow holds your capacity for necessary cruelty. If you were conditioned to be humble, your shadow contains your rightful pride. If you learn to be accommodating, your shadow guards your ability to say no without guilt. These aren't flaws. They're the missing pieces of your wholeness. And when you refuse to integrate them, they don't disappear. They accumulate in the unconscious, building pressure, until they erupt in dreams so visceral you wake up tasting phantom blood in your mouth. Jung recognized that teeth are instruments of assertion. To heal, you must reclaim your ability to bite back. Not metaphorically, actually. This means setting boundaries you've been too afraid to set because you're terrified of being called difficult. Speaking truths you've been too polite to speak because you're addicted to being liked. Defending territory you've been too accommodating to protect because you've confused self-sacrifice with virtue. Every time you swallow your truth, you lose another tooth. Every time you smile when you want to scream, another piece of your foundation crumbles. The dream will stop when you stop betraying yourself, but not a moment before. Your unconscious is far more honest than your ego, and it will show you the cost of your performance until you're willing to pay attention. This is the process Jung called individuation, the journey toward becoming who you actually are, rather than who you've been conditioned to be. And here's what's crucial to understand. Teeth dreams often appear during transitions that your conscious mind is trying to avoid. Career changes that require you to claim authority you've never owned. Relationship endings that force you to stand alone without the validation you've been using as a crutch. Identity crises where the person you thought you were dissolves, and you have to discover who remains. These moments terrify you because they require the death of the old self. And we are psychologically wired to resist our own transformation, even when our current identity is suffocating us. The terror you feel in the dream isn't about loss. It's about the transformation you're resisting with every defense mechanism you possess. Your psyche is trying to shed what no longer fits, but you're clinging to the familiar decay because at least you know how to navigate it. You'd rather keep rotting teeth than face the unknown space where new ones might grow. But Jung discovered that this resistance is precisely what creates psychological pathology. The neurotic, he said, is someone who refuses to suffer legitimately. They would rather maintain their symptoms than endure the pain of genuine change. And teeth dreams are your psyche's way of saying the cost of staying the same has become unbearable. Jung's most radical insight cuts through every comfortable illusion about healing. You cannot heal by becoming better. You heal by becoming whole. This means integrating your shadow, bringing the aggressive, sexual, ambitious, dark parts you've disowned back into conscious awareness and learning to wield them with intention. The person who dreams of losing teeth has split themselves in half. There's the acceptable public self performing virtue and competence and likability. And there's the hidden authentic self, containing every impulse and desire and need you've learned to exile. Integration means bringing these together, owning every part, refusing to project your disowned qualities onto others anymore. When you stop giving your power away to people who don't deserve it, the teeth dreams stop. When you reclaim your aggression and use it to protect what matters, the teeth dreams stop. When you speak the truth that's been rotting in your throat for years, the teeth dreams stop. Not because you've suppressed the symbol, but because you've resolved the psychological split that created it. This is why Jung's approach is so much more demanding than Freud's. Freud might help you understand that you fear castration, that you're anxious about aging, that you're mourning lost vitality. Fine. But Jung asks, what are you going to do about it? Understanding changes nothing. Integration changes everything. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you've been silencing yourself. Where have you surrendered your power? What part of yourself are you still refusing to own? Because until you name it, you can't reclaim it. Jung recognized that teeth appear in myths, rituals, and folklore across every human culture that has ever existed. This isn't coincidence. It's evidence of what he called the collective unconscious, the shared symbolic language of humanity that transcends individual experience. In ancient initiation rites, the deliberate removal or modification of teeth marked the death of childhood and the birth of adult power. In mythology, the loss of teeth often precedes a descent into the underworld, a journey through darkness that results in transformation. Your dream is connecting you to this ancient wisdom, inviting you into a process that's older than civilization itself. You're not just having a personal nightmare. You're participating in an archetypal pattern of death and rebirth that every human being must eventually face. But Jung's approach wasn't purely theoretical, and this is where most people who study him get it wrong. He required active engagement. He demanded that his patients do the work of integration in their actual lives, not just in the safety of his office. So here's what that looks like. Keep a dream journal. Track when teeth dreams appear and what's happening in your waking life at that exact moment. You'll start to see the pattern. The dream comes when you've compromised yourself in some way you're not consciously acknowledging. When you've said yes but meant no. When you've performed agreement but felt rage. When you've sacrificed your truth for someone else's comfort. Ask yourself these questions with brutal honesty. Where am I silencing myself? Where have I surrendered my power to avoid conflict? What part of myself have I exiled because I'm terrified of rejection? And then, this is the part that changes everything. Take one small action in the direction of reclaiming what you've lost. Set one boundary you've been avoiding. Speak one truth you've been swallowing. Defend one piece of territory you've been surrendering. Watch what happens. The anxiety will spike because your entire system is wired to keep you performing the false self. But underneath the anxiety, you'll feel something you haven't felt in years. Aliveness, authenticity, the solid ground of your own foundation rebuilding itself from within. Jung understood that the unconscious doesn't speak in abstract concepts. It speaks in images, in symbols, in nightmares so visceral they follow you into your waking life. The teeth crumbling in your mouth aren't a metaphor. They're a message written in the only language your psyche knows will get your attention. And the message is this: you are destroying yourself by refusing to be yourself. Every act of self-betrayal is a tooth lost. Every moment of performed niceness when you feel rage is another piece of your foundation crumbling. The dream is showing you the truth your ego is desperately trying to hide. You're collapsing from the inside out, and no external success or validation or distraction will stop it. Only integration will. Only the courageous act of owning every part of yourself, light and shadow, acceptable and forbidden, will rebuild what's been lost. That's the Jungian path. And it's the only one that leads to genuine wholeness.